Bible stories and things that happen in real life. We relate that to our Christian life. So I'm about to tell you a short story to show how people in African culture sometimes they sympathize with the dead or somebody that has had serious disaster, that everybody can pity that person. That's the only person they can sympathize with. But if you are well, you are strong, even if you have misfortune, you have serious, challenges, nobody will ever sympathize with you. Or maybe 1%, even people in your family can only sympathize with you. So there was this story after the war. My late uncle moved into the city to come look for job because he was working in the mines and then they were closed. So he came to the city to come look for job and he was a driver. That was his profession. So this man came. In our neighborhood, we have a good neighbor friend, and this guy has series of taxis in his care. So because he knew he was a driver, but my uncle said, "No, I don't want to be a taxi driver. I really want a job in a company or in a good business organization that I can be hired as a professional driver." So then one day, this neighbor asked him to help him drive him to his business location. And on their way going, they got an accident. It wasn't a serious accident, but like pedestrian, they had an issue with a pedestrian. A middle-aged man was walking along the road, and it was a very tight road. He couldn't go on the sidewalk. Instead, he was walking by the side of the road. And when cars were passing, they were, calling these people's attention, move to the sidewalk, move to the. He moved one leg, and the minute the taxi passed, the back tire, he put his foot down, and the back tire walked, on his toes, on his left foot toes, and then he ended up having some dislocation of those joints. So when that happened, they called their attention, they stopped the taxi. They couldn't even go to their location they were supposed to go. So they loaded this man into the taxi and they got him to the hospital. By then, I was working in a clinic nearby and they called my attention, they did the x-ray. And then I told him, I said he has had dislocations because with the x-ray film I saw. So then the man said, okay, well, we're going to take you to the hospital so they can give you good treatment. And this man that has had this issue, he became so aggressive. I said, no, you guys can't take me to hospital without my family knowing. I have my son-in-law who is a police officer, my eldest daughter's husband. I'm going to call him. Then the man said, I don't have any problem with that. Call him. We too will be happy to have one of your relatives on board to know exactly what happened. It wasn't our fault. So they went to the hospital for treatment. And then when the son-in-law came, he spoke with him and then he said he doesn't want the man that he got the accident with to be involved. He wants to sue them because you see these people, they have cars, they are insured. How could he take me off from my job in pain and in the end they are not going to give me any benefit? If I don't sue them, then the man said, well, I don't really want to go to court, but whatever you ask for, I will negotiate so we can solve your problem. I can see reasons with you. You are going to work. You're going to stay away from work for some time. So we're going to go into agreement. I will take care of your medical bills until you are strong again, excuse me, to go back to work. And then we will talk. If you want me to give you some money to, to feed your family, I can do that. So they started the agreement. Even his son-in-law, was complying with this man. But this man that was involved in this accident, He was so unreasonable, he couldn't. He was so aggressive. He started, having serious quarrels with this man. The man said, okay, well, let me stay back. Thank God your in-law is a police officer. He is a man of the law. He can advise you. That man started talking to his father-in-law. He couldn't listen. So the man to step by. And then the guy said, okay, well, you say you're going to sue. If you sue in actual sense, the driver that was on the wheel, they are going to ask questions, not me. I just want to come into this case because I asked this man to drive me to some location. But if this is what you want, then let's go according to the law. And then they left him to go. He sued, they served, and then they called up his case. So by the time they went to court, they manipulate. I don't know if he wanted my uncle who was the driver to just go to the prison. That could satisfy him. I didn't know. Everybody pleaded, tried to get a lawyer for my uncle to talk about this. The man said nothing. And indeed, at the end of the day, there was some sort of delay. I don't know if he manipulated. They charged my uncle and then they took him behind bars. He spent 24 hours. The next day, we went to bail him and he came out. And then they adjourned the case. So that's how they were now attending the court case. He was going there with the POP on his boat. So as time goes on, I think they appear like 3 times. So the third time they got a judgment. They only give my uncle a minor traffic rules and charge because it was a human, he had some injury. And my uncle was discharged and acquitted. And this man was standing there in dismay. So everybody was like, mhm. The magistrate had to read the case to him, the laws, how it applies to the traffic rules, that the man had just like 2 count charges. And they charged him to pay 30,000 leones. That at this time was like close to maybe $2. And that money was going to the government fund, to the fund for the court, not to him. So there was no agreement that anybody should take responsibility of his damage or injuries. So that was how my uncle got discharged and acquitted of the case. And then one day, my uncle finally got a job. He was working for somebody, a lecturer that was working in the university, not knowing this man who was a gardener in this university. So when my uncle went there, he said he stepped out when his madam went to the office to smoke because he was a heavy smoker. So, and then he saw this man using, you know, the gardening tools, watering the flowers and the plants. And then he said few steps close to him and said, hi, how are you, sir? And then he looked at him and then he said, God will punish you. And my uncle said, for what? You guys know what you did to me. Then my uncle said, no, I know you are aggressive. Let me just walk away. And then he said he walked away. And the reason I brought this story is a lot of times people press on charges against people, hoping they think so much and they feel they can punish that person, maybe for even something that was his own negligence, because he was not supposed to walk on the streets. And then they cautioned you, you went to the sidewalk, and then when the car is about to pass, just by the end of the back tire, you put your foot down again on the road, and the tire walks on you without the driver's attention. Only other pedestrians had to call their attention. You guys have an incident. And that was when they stopped, they came. How did it happen? We stopped, cautioned you, move out of the road, and then you went to the sidewalk. How did you come again down? I don't know if he was doing that, consciously or unconsciously, but that was how they explained everything happened. And there were eyewitnesses. So after that incident now and the court case and everything, he ended up having nothing. With all his medical bills, he piled up, took to the court. because that time my uncle too had a lawyer. There were witnesses that the owner of the car was ready to foot his bill. He was the one who disputed against it. He wasn't listening to anybody. So at the end of it, nobody could refund. The only thing they told him was, you had leave from your work because you had this issue. So your work will foot your bill. They're going to pay you for sick leave. They're going to give you other benefits. So these people have any charges because the eyewitness report said it was your own negligence. We only charge this man for traffic rules because he was not supposed to walk. I don't know whether it was one-way road, and that morning because of traffic they use it, so it's like they break traffic rules. So those were the only charges that went towards the driver, who was my uncle. And this man thought that car was insured. They're going to pay him insurance, they're going to give you these benefits. The man said, I am not even the owner of this taxi. I'm just a caretaker. My landlady hand it over to me to control it with the drivers, because she is a lady and she doesn't have that time to be having a lot of headache with the driver. So she hand it over to me. I run it that time to do my own business, which I had to pay at the end of the day. But the driver who was supposed to come was sick. So I had to ask this neighbor to drive me because he was not doing anything by that time. And then, unfortunately, we got into this problem with this man. We were trying to settle everything out of court. I was even writing a document to sign an agreement between me and him that I was going to pay foot his medical bill, and we give him even money because of this. He's going to be absent from work. He said no, he has to go to court. At the end of the day, he went to court, and the court didn't make any charges that can give him benefits, because all witness and he himself confirmed. Why did you do this? He said because if it has been between them, they will deny. But if they are before the law, then they explain the law to him. These people got that problem because that was not the way for them that morning. Because that morning, that road was narrow. It was a one-way coming, not two-way going and coming. So that was all the charges they gave my uncle. So he carried that grudge until that day my uncle met him. He was so upset. He wanted to start raining abuses on him. So he said he just left him and moved away from him. And that was the end. We never set eyes on him again. And that time he was well fit and was back to work. So this is how humans behave. That can happen to anybody. Accident, nobody pray for it. That is why they call it accident. It is unplanned. And then it happened, you fall victim. And somebody is ready to offer all your demands. You said no. You have to go before the law. So I don't know whether him or the law deceived him. Only God knows. So guys, let's be careful. You are human, the other person is human. Not because this time you are at the advantageous side, that person is at the disadvantageous side. You want to do more, press more charges on that person, or create more problem, more distress. It will come back for you. As the saying goes, karma is real. Thank you. Bye bye.